Back to school. Let's get dialed in. Hello and welcome to Texas Talkin, the show that dares to have the pointed conversations you've probably spent time daydreaming about having. You're dialed in to what I can only describe as an intellectual duel so epic, so unprecedented, it might just redefine your faith in humanity or destroy it entirely. Today, we bring you the political showdown you didn't know you needed, but one that fate, yes, fate, has so graciously delivered. In the red corner, we have me, older, wiser, but still proudly unqualified to back down from a fight. And in the blue corner, my leftist high school AP psychology teacher from nearly 20 years ago, who once, as it turned out, quite accurately predicted that my young, idealistic liberal self would grow up into the red-blooded conservative Republican you all know today. So here we are, defying time, logic, and the natural order of teacher-student dynamics. This is like the Super Bowl, except instead of touchdowns, we're throwing rhetorical haymakers, and instead of Tom Brady, well, you're stuck with me. Now, let's set the stage. Back in high school, this teacher was an unstoppable force of intellectual authority, wielding his red pen like Excalibur and assigning essays with the precision of a drill sergeant. Meanwhile, I was the verbose A student with just enough wit to get me in trouble. A simpler time, sure, but the stakes are higher now because this time we're battling for bragging rights, truth, and possibly a slice of dignity. Will my former teacher bring the same energy, charisma, and intellect that landed him in the number one spot for my all-time favorites? Or will he buckle under the weight of my carefully honed adult-level sass and internet-fed expertise? Who's the real political authority? What if we both realize we can't change each other's minds? Can left and right agree on more than we disagree? Or are there simply too many irreconcilable differences? Strap in, folks. This is more than a conversation. This is 20 years of unresolved classroom tension boiled down into two people desperately trying to prove they're the smartest person in the room. So grab your popcorn and maybe a textbook for fact-checking, because it's about to get gloriously fun. And joining me now is my all-time favorite high school teacher, Chris Kruger. Chris, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Shilo. There was some pretty tough competition for that favorite teacher title. I had some very talented peers, so that is high praise coming from a strong student like yourself.
Thank you, sir. And I gotta say it. You haven't aged more than a day probably in the last 20 years, and it's still weird for me to call you by your first name even 20 years later.
I understand. I see when I went back to, I teach at my alma mater now. And so when I first started there were several teachers, they've all retired now, but there were several teachers that I had. And that was a little weird calling them by their first names too. So I understand that it's a little, but you'll get used to it. So,
I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. All right. In my run-up segment, I let the viewers know that you somehow knew decades ago that I would end up becoming a conservative Republican, despite at the time having been a idealistic liberal high school kid. How did you know that?
I can't remember anything exactly. I remember you saying a lot of things like people should take more responsibility. And while I agree, that's just not something most 17-year-olds say. And so, you seem to have less patience for people that were not taking care of themselves and were relying on government to fill in the soft patches. That you were a little bit more, or you were a little bit less patient with those people that should be pulling themselves up by their own bootstraps, which is something I would like to see as well.
Conservatism.
Sure, but that was, that would have been, you said some things like that that made me think that's going to be you. And well, and here you are in 20 years, right?
Yeah, and I
Like,
and I bet against you. I said that's impossible. That's never going to happen. And then of course, 10, 15 years later,
yeah,
here we are.
yeah.
And I want to get to the whole heart of why you wanted to come on and why I invited you on, and that is you've told me off camera that you disagree with about 90% of my views, which doesn't surprise me. But you then stated that left and right, in your opinion, agree on more than we disagree. What did you mean by that?
Well, so this, uh, I think that we're divided. We're in a deeply divided nation, and I think that many Republican pundits, many right wing pundits would, maybe not the pundits, but the voters, and I've certainly seen some interviews with run of the mill supporters of Republican causes, that they are less, they would like to see a coming together as well. So after the election, I was feeling a little bit out of place. I certainly was looking for a way to try to offer an olive branch, and you're really the only conservative person, the only outspoken conservative person that I know. I have some friends, well, all my friends are further to the right than I am, but there's a varying degree of there's an array of people, and but whereas my friends and I are over on the left, you are you're the person that I know the best that's way over on this side of the
On the
spectrum.
right. On the right.
And I thought that, and I know I'm not going to change any of your viewers, listeners' minds, but I hope that just by reaching out and saying, hey, we're real people over here, and I know you know that, I know your viewers know that, but I just want to humanize the left, and I hope that there are people on the right that are coming on, left wing wacko shows, and doing the same thing here. I didn't just call you a wacko. I'm let's say on that towards the right end of the spectrum.
So, do you think, though, Chris, that at least some of the division that we see in our country is in many ways manufactured?
But yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't that if that wasn't if I didn't make that point clear, that's what I was saying. You said it a lot more succinctly. Thank you. Yes.
I would tend to agree with you on that. As far as I think that there are forces within our country that want us divided. They want us divided along ideological lines, sure. But beyond that, they want us divided along these sort of tribal lines, along the lines of race, sexual orientation, gender, those types of things. And so they drive this wedge. They try to paint people as racists, as an example, or sexists, or homophobes, so on and so forth. All of the isms and all the phobes, and we probably disagree on this. But I don't think that those criticisms are as prevalent.
Shiloh, I agree that the left is using those as wedge issues, just the way I think that some leaders on the right are using fear of axe murdering immigrants to divide from the other side. Okay, I think that there's again blame to go around, and I think that we need to realize that leaders are inflaming those differences in order to try to win elections. You only need to look at the fact that just 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we had Democrats and Republicans in Congress often cooperating together on legislation. That just doesn't happen anymore because, a moderate Republican can't win elections because he or she's going to get primaried because they aren't conservative enough. And the same thing happens on the left. And so we wind up with leaders like in, the the second congressional district in this state, we had a leader that I think was more than conservative enough, but did not pass the smell test, according to Republican voters.
And
They
who,
weren't. They
just for
were.
my
They were.
viewers and for my own sake, who are you referencing?
Oh, see now I can't remember Chris. It's not my district anymore. They changed my districts. I'm not in his district anymore. Chris Stewart
Okay.
was his
I've
name.
actually met Chris Stewart, Air Force
Okay,
veteran. Yeah.
but his replacement was the candidate that I was. And looking at the candidates that were up for grabs, the most conservative candidate won because because she'd claimed the far right of the Republican spectrum. Anyway, there's plenty of other better examples, I'm sure, than that. I'm mostly just talking in general about these hyper partisan divisions that are being sown by both left and right leaders.
So you mentioned the left veering further to the left, the right veering further to the right. And I want to ask a question that really speaks to that. And that is, I can't think of one issue. I really can't. One issue on which I find myself in agreement with today's Democrat Party. Haven't they veered so far to the left that Republicans like me have a very difficult time identifying any common ground?
Well, so I would, is the opioid epidemic not of concern to you?
It absolutely is. As
Okay,
a recovered heroin addict, it's of utmost concern to me.
Okay, so can we agree that we need to do something about it and stop blustering on, the extreme ends of this, and try to figure out a way to solve that problem? That would be the one that would be the first one I would point to. How about foreign interference with our social media?
Yeah. Okay. Well, you got me. There are two issues right there where you and I could find ourselves in alignment.
So, immigration, I'm sure, is an issue that I've looked back at some of your previous shows, and it has been an issue that you've talked about. I know that you and I have different solutions to the immigration problem, but sure, Democrats, we admit that there's that immigration is an issue that needs to be addressed. But the general approach, we're going to take different approaches to solving it. But I have yet to meet any of my Democrat friends who think that there's not a problem. Now, I tend towards it legalizing making it easier for these people. How are the farms going to get the workers that they need if we can't have immigrants coming in? How can we have in Utah right now? We have this burgeoning tech sector, and we need computer scientists who are just they're not coming out of universities locally. So how do we solve that? I would solve that by making it easier for immigrants to come. And then that solves your undocumented problem, which I agree is a problem. So let's find a way to compromise rather than just divide up into polarized camps where we can't, because then we can't talk to each other. We're just going to talk past each other.
Well, and I go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I agree with you that immigration can be done more efficiently, and I'm in favor of legal immigration. My biggest concern with illegal immigration is that we don't know in many instances who the hell these people are and what their intentions are, what their background is. If we have criminals pouring over the border, drug dealers, etc., that presents a whole new set of problems. So I'm not against or opposed to the idea of people coming here from other countries who want to assimilate into American culture and to be a productive member of society. I think that adds value to our culture.
Couldn't agree more. So I guess my solution to the immigration problem is to increase legal avenues for immigration, rather than to as some political leaders do, demonize all immigrants, uh, and then just use that as a wedge issue to uh, increase divisions between right and left. Um, how about the decline of the American manufacturing sector? Can we agree that that's a problem?
Yes, it's a major problem.
Okay, so let's have a conversation. Okay, we both agree. So we both agree on opioids. We both agree that I understand that you and I might feel differently about how we might solve these problems, but I bet we can find a lot of common ground. But we can't talk about that because if I'm a Republican member of Congress, I can't be seen to be talking to a Democrat, and the Democrats can't be seen talking to and making deals with Republicans.
Well, I think you raise a fair and valid point in that we can find common ground almost immediately in identifying the problems. Where I think, as you correctly pointed out, where we might deviate is on the solution to those problems. Although, from what I'm hearing, there may be some overlap there as well.
Well, there's a bunch of different solutions that have been battered around regarding the opioid epidemics and how we might alleviate that, how we can revitalize the American manufacturing sector. I think that if we take a little bit from some Republican ideas and some Democrat ideas, we can find some common ground. How about this, Shiloh? Here's one that I was when you said there's almost nothing I think that Democrats and I agree on. How about this one? This one's a pretty dear to my heart, if not the number one issue. I'm very disturbed by the increasing wealth gap that these super billionaires are taking they're having such a profound impact on American politics, both on the left and the right. The Koch brothers, for instance, and George Soros. Okay,
Yep.
That they're so wealthy that they're getting to the point where they're dictating public policy. I understand that that's an exaggeration, but they need to. I think it worries me deeply looking at history. Being a history teacher, I can't see that an increasing wealth gap is going to do us any good. So I'm curious as to whether you perceive that as a problem. If not, why not? If so, what would be your solution to solving it? I've talked to some of and seen some conservative commentators that have expressed some interest, that have expressed some concern over these hyper billionaires, and don't they take too much? Isn't their voice a little bit too loud? And do your viewers, is that something that concerns them? And if so, what should we do about it?
So you just said something that I want to speak to, and that is you said it may be an exaggeration to say that these billionaires are dictating policy. I don't think it's an exaggeration at all, Chris. And I'll tell you, more than that, my concern is these three entities, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard Capital, that own essentially everything. So you're not going to find an argument from me about these globalist corporations that are run by elitists who essentially own all the other companies, all the other publicly traded companies. As a MAGA conservative, I have quite a few elements of populism in the way I think. I am not okay with these billionaires who go about buying up all these other companies and essentially trying to uniformly dictate what the rest of us do. I'm all about less intervention, less interference from the government, and even from corporations. So I think we can find some agreement there. I do think that it's a problem. I don't know that it can be solved by the government, but it is a problem.
I you know I'm it sounds like you're a little bit more plugged into the people that are the mega donors, right? The the Koch brothers, for instance, right, is one that I'm familiar with that are
Hmm.
generous donors to Republican causes, as there are the same, on the other side. I've heard of this Vanguard group that you speak of, but I'm embarrassed to say I have not heard of the other two that you mentioned.
Look into BlackRock and State Street Capital. You'll
Okay,
be shocked when you see what they own.
probably not. Probably not. Um, I have some very liberal friends who are fighting the good fight, and they're deeply concerned about the the amalgamation of wealth and as the gap widens between rich and poor, that then the poor the wealthy, Elon Musk, for instance, right, is going to be able to dictate policy that he maybe doesn't deserve to. So, and I would agree that there are equal, there are people on the left that are having just as much of an unequal say as well. Okay, so just understand that I realize that there are the mega billionaires that are on both sides of the equation. They upset me. That concerns me. It concerns me. So
So
I will take a quick look at that once we're done. But State Street and BlackRock. Okay, got it.
State Street Capital, BlackRock, and Vanguard, who you said you're already familiar with. I want to ask you about a subject that you're much more of an expert on than I am, and I'm going to pay you a compliment when I do it. My viewers don't know this, but something I've always admired about you, Chris, greatly, is that you were
Chris.
educated at Brown University. You probably could have charted out any lucrative career path you wanted to. You're obviously very bright. Instead, you chose to dedicate your career to public school, a system that, in my view, isn't exactly what I'd call in good shape. Why?
Well, I would first of all, I would disagree. I don't know about I don't know about the Texas school system, but the Utah public school system, we feel pretty good about. I feel pretty good about Hunter, where I taught you and a whole bunch of other just great kids, and now the school that I'm at now, Skyline. I just really feel like they're both great institutions that I'm just very proud to be part of. I honestly didn't know that I would end up here. My initial goal was to marry my high school sweetheart, and then we would both find careers in academia together. But I just took a couple of years off in between undergrad and grad school, and with the expectation that I was going to go on and become a history professor, and just fell in love with teaching and realized that I wouldn't get to teach as much if I were a university professor, and just that connecting with kids, and as you may remember, I was a high school coach as well,
Mm-hmm.
and just really fell in love with being involved with kids' lives, and they're just so much fun to be around. Young people, they just keep. You say, I joke about this, but you say I still look the same.
Yeah.
I jokingly tell people that ask, I say, like, the kids keep me young. I mean, and they do. I stay plugged into the jargon, and I stay plugged into the issues, and the occasion, and they have to teach me how to use the apps on my phone. But no, but it's a lot of fun. It really does keep me. I have some friends that they wake up in the morning and they're like, oh, work, and you know,
You love
I
it.
I love it. Yeah, I'm in my 33rd year. I just yeah, I just love it. I just love every minute of it. That's an exaggeration, but there's I don't love grading essays.
Your
Uh,
your
I,
your
I don't think
passion Go ahead.
I don't think you'll ever find if you ever see a teacher that says they love grading essays, they're lying.
I've been on the receiving end of some of your grading, and it's not exactly what I'd call easy at times. But
Yeah.
your passion always came through in the classroom. You made it fun. You said it is fun. Well, you made it fun. You made it engaging. You made it enjoyable. And I will always feel like I owe you a debt of gratitude for the experience that I had with you as a teacher in high school.
You're very welcome. And kids like you, and you were in that class with Sarah, right? And
Yep.
Whitney, and
Yep.
anyway, just a bunch of great kids in that class, and just fantastic. When I look back on that all time favorite, on the list of all time favorite kids, and that that just keeps it awesome. Just keeps it. Every year I'm like, oh, it's never going to be as good as, the class of whatever. And then, every
And it
year it
is.
turns out that there's another, this wonderful group of young people that just keeps it fresh, keeps it fun, keeps me feeling vital. Yeah.
Well, Chris,
Anyway,
this has been much more of a positive dialogue and conversation than a debate. That is fine with me. You are among very few liberals who have come on to the show and had an engagement with me, so I appreciate that. I
well,
love debating, as you know. I know you love debating, but this has been a good thought provoking conversation.
that was my hope. And I hope that your, your listeners, your viewers will understand, will if nothing else, oh, I'm gonna, I disagree with that guy, but he he wants the things that I want. He wants safety for, he wants health and safety for his family. He wants the American democratic experience to continue. um Anyway, thank you for having me on your show. That was every bit of what I had hoped it would be.
Me for
This
me as
this
well.
has been every bit of what I hoped it would be.
Well, I'm very
There we
glad to
go.
hear that, Chris. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the great state of Texas. Stay dialed in to interviews and content just like this by clicking that follow button on my Facebook page, or hit the subscribe button to learn more about exclusive access that you won't want to miss.